Wow. Well, I certainly appreciate it. That was an awesome intro. So thank you. And even thank you for kind of going with your gut and building out this little platform, that's going to exponentially grow as, viewers start to get on it. So I'm excited to be on.
I'm going to jump right in with the first question. So, kind of in line with the introduction, you've shown up for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So, what makes you say yes to investing your time and energy in people? Like, how do you make that decision?
Yeah, for me, I think what makes it easy for me to say yes to people, to invest my time and energy is literally it's been inherited to me from my mother. My mother was like that. She was a big servant of people and had a big heart. And so that's something that's just been passed down to me. And so I just automatically have that type of characteristic in me. It's sort of like I was studying someone who climbs Everest mountains, and there's these people called the Sherpas, and Sherpas are like the guys that help people climb to their mountain to reach the tippy top to the point. And so I kind of assimilate my life in the same sense of, as people are trying to climb their said mountain in their life, I want to help them do the same and kind of want to be that person right next to them that can like encourage them like, hey, come on, we got this. Hey, we got one more cross to go. You're gonna get through it. There's some wind coming, but hey, this is how we're gonna get through it. And so for me, I find like full like fulfillment and joy in helping people reach their Mount Everest in life. And so that's just something that was passed down to me from my mother.
I think that's a great illustration because, like, we can all picture someone bundled up and like helping you along this way that, like, without help could be really precarious, but with help is something that like is even fun. And
Yep.
so I appreciate that. But I'm going to push on it because it's a great illustration. But you do a lot of things. Like you are
Hmm.
involved in a lot of places with a lot of
Yeah.
people. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot is, well, I can't say yes to everything, or I can't be
Yeah.
involved in all of these things. And I'm not saying people need to be, but I do think if somebody were to ask you today to like, hey, could you help us with this thing? How would you make your decision, or what would help you make the decision of whether or
Mhm.
not you were going to get involved?
Yeah, like for me, I look at two things, like the risk of doing and the risk of not doing, because obviously, whatever you say yes to, you're also saying no to something else. And so it's just really about me figuring out, okay, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And so I just have to figure out the pros and cons of what best suits me in that position to kind of like help my, my side of things so that I can't exert too much energy or else I'm going to be sacrificing and losing a lot on my end. So it's just a deliberate practice of mine. Like, okay, if I say yes to this, what am I also saying no to? So it's just trying to figure out that comfortable balance that I'm willing to take.
Well, and I appreciate that because it's super pragmatic, where I think a lot of times there's this belief that like you'll know.
Yeah,
Something will just, you'll know what opportunities are the right opportunities. And like
yeah,
that has not been my experience necessarily. Like I think there are those once in a lifetime things where like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But like
hmm,
that is not a day-to-day reality, at least not for me.
right. And it helps too to have like for instance, I have a great partner. So like my wife, I always bounce ideas off of her. And so, I'm like, hey babe, you know me probably more than anybody else because you almost been with me for almost more of when you weren't with me, if that makes sense. And so for me, I just bounce off ideas off of her because she knows who I am and she knows how big of a heart I have and how sometimes I can overextend. And she'd be like, I don't think you should. I think you should just chill for a minute. So it kind of helps me in that essence too.
I believe in that circle of people. Like, who are the people that are like, maybe not that? And so I think that is an important part of that. Like, if you're really not sure, who are the
Hmm.
people you're going to let into that? And I love that. What is the most important lesson you learned from someone who wasn't officially your mentor?
Yeah, so one of the most important lessons for me is literally came about within the last, I would say, year or so. So I met this man. His name's George Steed. He's an executive in the nonprofit world. But before he was that, he was early on in his journey of trying to become like getting his doctorate, law degree, which he ended up getting. But a lot of deaths and things happening into his life to where he ended up being homeless. And so he was telling me a story of how one day he was sitting behind a bus stop, laying down on the concrete next to some shrubs, and he finally woke up because the sprinklers just sprayed up on him. And so he woke up to a pile of ants just biting him and stuff. And so as the ants was biting him, he was trying to take off all of his clothing that he had on because he was trying to shake the ants off. And so as he was shaking off his clothes, he wound up in the middle of the street, and a bus was coming, and the bus just stopped like literally right on time to where a point where it wasn't going to hit him. And the bus driver was like, "Hey man, what the heck are you doing? What's going on?" And so he was like, "Man, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get all these bugs. The sprinkler system got on." He's like, "Man, come on, come in," because it was pretty early to where he didn't have anybody at the bus stop. And so he was like, "Come on in, come on in." So he was like, where are you trying to go, or where can you go?" And he was like, "Well, my family, he stays on this side of town, like on the opposite side of town." And then the bus driver looked at him and was like, "Man," because he was telling him his life story. He was like, "Man, I can't let your family see you like this." Right. And so he took him and detoured him to a homeless shelter to where he can get himself up and get going. And but I tell that story because the life lesson I learned is that even at the critical moments of your lowest moments, like it can help shape you and understand that everything in your life is working out for your good. Like it's shaping you within those experiences to ultimately help you become, where you set out to become. And so that's the biggest lesson that I've learned is that no matter through my failures, my successes, whatever, all the experiences that I've had is ultimately shaping me into something that I'm ultimately going to become in the future. And so that's one of the biggest lessons that I kind of had to relearn within the past year.
Well, and I think it's a lesson we have to continually learn. They're the lessons that you read when you're feeling really good,
Hmm.
but when you really need to hear them, sometimes it's hard. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do better because this was hard. And like one of the things I've been leaning into a lot lately is the Stoics and like just
Mm.
this like absolute who are you? What does it matter? And like, pitied is the man who has never struggled because he doesn't know who he is. And like
Mm.
that is important because it's hard to tell someone that. Like maybe it's not like maybe when someone's in that moment, you sit with them and you don't tell them that right away. But I believe it. Like I think that is true. Like who are you and how do you rebuild? Because things,
Mhm.
nothing in life goes exactly the way we want it to, right?
Right. That's big. No, that's key. You're totally right. And that's kind of like the lesson. It's like, man, take the moments where you are at your lowest, and it's going to help you reshape you into who you're ultimately supposed to become. And so, yeah, I always look at that. Like, no matter the failures I have, I always look at it in that light, in that sense of like, it's helping me for my own good. Like, even though it may look bad on the surface, it's ultimately going to help me reach to that end picture that I'm looking to get.
Absolutely. Next question. What's something people romanticize about mentorship that doesn't really match reality?
You kind of for me, when it comes to that piece about the mentorship, what people don't want to match with the reality, is kind of like what I mentioned in the beginning about, helping serve people. Like for me, I'm a big servant. I want to help people. But the reality is that as you're helping people release some of their burden, it's not like the burden just magically leaves. Like at times you can take on that burden as well, especially if something goes wrong. Like for me, I worked in fields where I have to help people like get services and there's a lot of trauma and stuff like that. And so for me, being the servant that I am and wanting to help people, yes, that burden may have lifted off of them, but I ultimately pack it on to myself. And so for people that think that the burden just magically, leaves, nah, it's going and transferring somewhere else. And you're just hoping that you're not the person that it's going to and being shipped to. So that's what I would say for that one.
It's real. I think one of the things that's been interesting to me, so like in spaces of education, we talk about mentorship a lot. And
Hmm.
so I would say in most professional roles I've had, and most academic roles I've had, conversations about mentorship seem pretty normative. And so it's been interesting to me that a lot of the feedback I've gotten is like, thank you for acknowledging that mentorship isn't always formal.
Hmm.
And in fact, I think in most times it's not. Like people are entering relationships all over the place, whether they know it or not, whether they call it that or not. Um, and so I just think it's important to acknowledge where are some of the spaces where you have found yourself either mentoring or being mentored, but where there wasn't a title for that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because I've always like I began for the I would say about the last couple years or so, I've got myself a Google sheet, and this may sound crazy as heck. I got myself a Google sheet, and through the conversations that I'm having, I always write down like key moments within that conversations because I always want to go back and retract some of the lessons that was learned from that, so I could piece it onto something else and probably give it to someone else too. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned. It's like, how can I be intentional with the conversations that I have? And also, it's going to help me with that relationship too. And it's going to compound and help somebody else. So for me, like you mentioned, mentorship, like it's not always formal. Like we can have like a real conversation like we have now. And there's something that may spark my interest. And like, you inadvertently mentor me and help me with a lesson that I can literally take and apply it to someone else, and so, or something else. And so I think that's super key, and a really bright thing that you mentioned, because I really believe that too. Like a lot of times mentorship is informal, rather than formal all the time.
I think that I'm going to use a whole lot of words that I feel really passionate about, but I feel like we've commodified connection.
Mm.
And like in this world where like I'll connect with you, but what am I getting out of it?
Mm.
And I had a friend tell me today, it was like, oh, I had another person say like, that feels like a conversation you have with your therapist, or like, I don't think this is a question that I'm to be having. Basically, like you shouldn't be telling me things that are going on in your life that are hard, or that you might need wisdom or insight or help. And I think about like, I don't think that's a normal historic conversation. I think
Mm.
historically we partnered with one another, we learned things, we passed along things that we learned. And so I think that we've lost a lot of that. And so I just appreciate you and everybody who has been, Brandi, and will be, many others, part of this conversation, because I think what I'm trying to do here is remind people to have the conversations, and that that's okay and normal and good, and that therapists are great, huge room for therapists.
Hmm.
But what are we supposed to be getting from each other that we aren't? How to bring it back?
That's real.
So that's my tirade.
That's real. No, I love it. Like, cause like you mentioned, like the signal story. Like, I love stories. Like, that's something. Like, if I want to learn something, someone has to tell me it in a form of a story. Like, cause that's for me, whether it's fictional or not. That's the best way I learn personally. And so, like, that's why I always, when I started a conversation, man, like when I ask people about their story, like there's so many things you could take out of it, especially like with my kids that I talk about. Like I have them, one of the things like, hey, what's a quote, a song lyric, or whatever that inspires you, right? And they'd be like, oh, it's this quote from Whoop De Whoop. Okay, tell me the story about why that inspires you, because I want to know the moment. And so for me, I'm always learning through story, and what people sharing and exhibiting, because I feel like that's the most powerful key for everyone else, that can continue to get passed on. Like I told you a story about Mr. George Steed. He ain't even in here. But since he told me that story, I can then pass on that story, and you can tell that story to somebody else. Like, so it's just stories are like a living, like breathing, kind of like what I mentioned with the Google Doc, living, breathing Google Doc of an inventory that you can help any given person at any given time. So I love them.
I love it. I love it. I do think that like that is where I think mentorship has so much of its strength, is that so much of it is communal storytelling, advice sharing. It is not, here's the policies and procedures manual for how to like live your life. Like you can give me that, and it might have had all the answers on it, but I can tell you I did not remember
Right.
it. So tell me some
Facts.
stories.
Tell me some stories, man. Campfire type. Let's get it.
So this question is, what do people underestimate about the power of just showing up? And whether that is in your home, at the coffee shop, on a bus, at a gym, what are people missing out on?
Oh my gosh, that's good. That's good. Uh, 2 years ago, I had a student, and I was just getting into my intro to brand development class at Rice University. And every week we have a class, but this one student, no matter if it was one kid or if it was just him or the whole class there, he was always showing up. And so at the end of the class, he had a clothing brand that he wanted to, get off the street. And so what I did was I blessed him with some money so that it can help get his stuff off the ground. And then when he opened the envelope, I put a note in there and says, "Thank you for showing up. You just never know what blessings may occur when you do that." And so, like when he opened up the letter later on, when he got to the house, man, he texted me. He was like, "Man, thank you so much for that, man. I really appreciate it." And that was just a simple reminder for him. It's like you just never know what can happen by just showing up. And I think that's the power, and it should be a law. Is like wherever you go, just show up, like because that's the main thing, similar like to the gym. Like for me, sometimes it's hard to get to the gym, but if I get in my car and just go there and just show up, it's something that's going to motivate me to go in there and try to do something, right? And so I just feel like it's the same thing. As long as whatever place you want to be or want to get into, just show up, and you just never know what blessings may occur.
I think that's so valuable. And like I'm gonna A, date myself, and B, sound like I hate technology. And I'm not that old, and I don't hate technology. But I was in college when the iPhone came out.
Hmm.
And so like my freshman year, beginning of my freshman year, people are walking on sidewalks. They're looking at each other,
Mhm.
like, you know, next to that bench or next to you at that booth or next to you at that table or next to you while you're waiting for the bus was genuinely, in my recollection, more present.
Mm.
And then I remember like, and I don't know exactly when it dropped. So I don't know if this was the beginning of my sophomore year. I don't know, but it was like a noted shift. Like everybody had something in their ears and they were looking down at the ground. And it was like, it was a little bit like someone turned the lights off. Like
Mm.
there have been all of these opportunities to connect or grow or learn or be inspired or excited or invited into something or to share something with people that just stopped existing. And
Mm.
so I think like what I would add to what you said, everything you said is true and so helpful. But I also think like, what does it tangibly mean to show up? Like showing up with your phone in front of your face and unwilling to engage with somebody, I would argue, and I'm sure you would agree, is not the same as showing up.
Right. No, that's
So then
true.
what do
And
you think
you're
about
right.
that?
Yeah, because if you show up and just on your phone, I'm like, bruh, you might as well not shown up at all. At least so show up with intention. There we go. Show up with intention. I love that. I love it. And it's
Yeah.
crazy that you mentioned that about the iPhone thing and the shift in it because ever since I like started writing and wanted to get into more fiction, a lot of my greatest ideas have come from me just going on walks with my dog and just literally exploring the nature that's going around. And it allows me to create certain ideas. I'm looking at certain people and what they're doing in their daily life, and I'm like, man, that'll be a cool start to a story and stuff like that. So I'm kind of nerded out about like, man, I just want to kind of not it may sound strange. I like people watching because I can develop stories from it and I curate like a whole narrative in my own head because engulfed in that moment. But it would have never happened if I had some headphones in, I'm on my phone, and things of that nature. So like with what you said, man, that was powerful because that's like a practice that I'm doing now is how can I be more aware of my surroundings ever since I just started getting into fictional writing.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think we are even often subconsciously cutting ourselves off from people in ways we don't even know or acknowledge. And we got to call it what it is. And it's not like no one's better than you, no one's clapping back at you. It's just an encouragement that there's more out there for you.
Yep. Facts.
Yeah. So, who are you still learning from?
Man, I'm learning from everyone. Honestly, I know that sounds cliche as I don't know what, but I'm learning. I forgot what the name of the lady that did the quote, but I learned not only do I learn from people's mistakes, I learn from people's successes too. And the only way I'll be able to learn is if I'm aware and put myself in that intentional space, like you said. And so I feel like I can learn something from everyone, whether it's one little thing, three things, or whatever. And so I know it sounds crazy and great, like cliche-ish, but I learn from everyone, like but mainly through conversations. And so, whether that's through books, podcasts, interviews, whatever that is, I just try to be in the moment and engulf in that said conversation or whatever. So, to answer your question directly, it's learning from everyone, honestly, and that keeps me going. Literally, I learned from my daughter. So like we had my milk and cookies and I'm dumping the Oreos in the milk and my milk is kind of like at the tippy top. So when I dunked the milk spilled over and I'm like, doggone, I didn't spill milk. And my daughter was like, Dad, it's okay. Like, and it kind of reminded me of that that one saying, don't cry over spilled milk. Like it's not that big. Like you're making a big deal out of something so small, right? And so it just little things like that. And so I'm learning from her, like, man, just a little spilled milk ain't that big of a deal. Why am I tripping so hard of like, oh man, doggone it, I gotta give me a napkin? Dad, chill. It's just spilled milk. Like you're good. Like, so that lesson can carry on from anything I want to do in life. And so I learn from everybody.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. These are the last two questions. So, if someone listening feels invisible right now, what would you want them to hear?
Oh, if someone were to feel invisible right now, the biggest thing is you can never be too invisible if you know who you are, right? Because every day we gotta look ourselves in the mirror, right? And as long as you can see yourself for who you are, what you stand for, and why you do the things you do, you will always have that person beside you, right? And so every conversation, like, I think you are authentically you in every place that you are. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so as long as you know who yourself is and are grounded and in that aspect, I believe you will never become invincible because you can know where you can insert yourself in places that add, have added value, right? The places where you feel like you're invincible is maybe you don't belong in that space, and therefore you're like, and now your self-esteem is lower because then it puts you at risk of like lowering who you are. But if you know who you are, like that person in the mirror, you can step in any place and add value, and it makes you feel less invisible because people gonna show up and be like, man, I like what you do. Like, you're smart, you're witty, man, you add value in this space, like, and it just makes that whole moment better for you, and encouraging. So I like that aspect of it. Know thyself, and you'll always have one friend.
There is nothing to add to that. Like, that's the answer to that question. I didn't know there was a right answer to that question.
Me neither.
But turns out there was, and it was that one. And I love how, like, not only is it like knowing who you are, like that's work we can do. But the second is like, maybe it's informing. Maybe this is not your space. Mm-hmm. And so I think like both of those things are so incredibly important. Thank you for that. Okay, last question. Mm-hmm. What's one small step someone could take this week to invest in another person?
One small step that I think someone can take this week is just starting a conversation. Literally starting a conversation, because you never know what that can lead to, good or bad, right? At least maybe it was just the way you came in on that conversation. Maybe it was your body language, the way, right? I just feel like you can learn so much by just starting something, like whatever it is. If you have a goal, you can start small. I think for me, as I'm a big story person, I love stories, and I always say conversations, because you can learn so much through conversations. So that would be my first step. If you want to learn something, start with conversations. If you want to do something, start it with a conversation. You got to talk to somebody to get a said answer. So I would say that. To start the conversation.
Thank you so much for your time. Like I said in your intro, always appreciate the conversation. Super glad that this one other people get to join. Yes. But thank you so much for your time. It was great to have you.
Shoot, anytime, any place. Appreciate you always. And I'm just one call to text away.
And we love that. Tell your family I said hi.
I definitely will. They're gonna light up, especially Brandi. She's like, oh, tell my girl I said hello. How y'all girls do. But I got you. I
love her. Okay.
I got you.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
Oh, you too. Take care.